Thank you. Thank you. It's the first time I've been introduced, and I don't know what he said. It was all good, though, right? So the other day, I was hanging out with my nephew, and I was telling him what life was like when I was his age. And if I was ever curious about how something worked, I'd always look it up in Encyclopedia Britannica. Of course, he had no idea what that was, so he opens up his iPad, and guess where he got his source of information from? Wikipedia. So amazing, you can fit the entire Encyclopedia Britannica onto one page of Wikipedia. But what really happened here? In one generation, a 240-year-old institution becomes irrelevant. Well, the decentralized information system we know as the internet happened. And the real difference here is how the content gets created. With the internet, or with Encyclopedia Britannica, it was all centralized. Britannica would go out, hire 4,000 contributors, they'd create the content, then they'd go out and sell it, and only the people that bought the Encyclopedia Britannica would have access to the content. Well, with Wikipedia, it's all decentralized. So anybody can contribute to Wikipedia. Anybody can read Wikipedia. And in the end, Wikipedia has 270,000 monthly active editors. The other big difference is speed. So next time you're watching a big sporting event, see how fast the score gets updated on the Wikipedia page as the game ends. Usually it's within a few minutes. So Wikipedia is just one example of how the internet changed our world by decentralizing information. Well, the blockchain is going to decentralize everything else, and it's going to affect you. By the end of this talk, it'll affect stuff from the shoes you're wearing to the money in your pocket to the music you consume. So in 2009, we had the financial crisis, and a lot of people lost trust in the banks. So an experiment was launched to see if we could run a decentralized payments network. Bitcoin was seen as a new hope. And to understand this, you got to understand how a ledger works. So for the non-bankers in the room, a ledger is usually it's money going in, money going out, you have your balance. It's like what you see when you log into your online banking. Then it's ever breathing. Every day it changes. Money goes in, money goes out, your balance changes. Money goes in, money goes out, your balance changes. So in a centralized service like PayPal, whose ledger do we trust? Well, PayPal's the trusted authority. So they're the ones that keep track of your money. They're the ones who tell you how much balance you have. But in a decentralized payments network, there's 6,000 computers around the world all trying to update the ledger. Whose ledger do we trust? And so that's the innovation here. That's where the blockchain comes in. It's really a process to figure out how do we update this ledger that's shared. So here's how it works. Every 10 minutes, the blockchain gets updated. It gets updated with a new block of transactions. Now, to figure out which computer updates the blockchain, all these computers, they're called miners, are all competing against each other to solve a very energy-intensive mathematical problem. And the more processing power each computer puts in, the greater chance they have at winning, similar to a lottery. The more tickets you buy, the greater chance you have at winning. And so let's go through a round of competition. So new round of competition. All these computers are fighting really hard. They're working really hard to solve this mathematical formula. About 10 minutes later, one of them comes up and says, hey, I discovered the problem. And I'm going to add in these block of transactions. Then all the other computers in the network check and verify. First of all, yes, you got the problem right. And then second, all the transactions you included are valid. If more than 50% of those computers agree, that block of transactions is included. So that's how the blockchain works. Very simple, eh? As nice as it is that I can explain it to you, why don't we see it live? So let's switch to the video here. This is it. This is the blockchain. This is Bitcoin's blockchain. Currently, 6,000 computers around the world are moving money. And this is real money. It's not fake money. And this is happening live right now. So on the bottom left, you see latest transactions. These are new transactions coming in that want to get processed. And on the top here are the last block of transactions that have been included. So let's look at block 39993. Okay, so you can see there's 868 transactions in it worth $10 million. And if we scroll down, you can see each individual transaction, going from this Bitcoin address to that Bitcoin address. I saw there's ones for a few thousands. This one seems to be pretty big. Like $267,000, that one right there. This is real money that people are trusting. And this is live. This is how the blockchain works. So great, let's go back to the slides. So that's the Bitcoin's blockchain. Now, a blockchain is really a distributed ledger, a shared ledger that multiple parties are using. It really allows multiple parties to collaborate without having to trust each other. And it's really good at three things. 1, transparency. 2, authentication. And 3, auditing. Great, so we have this new amazing tool. What problems in the world can we solve? Well, first thing we think of course, the banking world. The banking world has embraced the blockchain, so much so that it's allowed the empire to strike back. And one of the big examples for the blockchain in the banking world is correspondent banking. So correspondent banking, for the bankers not in the room, correspondent banking is when you send an international payment and your money just kind of disappears. And then a week later, you keep calling your bank and they say they've sent the money, but the receiver still hasn't gotten it. And you hope it arrives eventually. So what's happening in the background is your money is skipping from one bank to another correspondent bank to another one. And the reason we have this system here is because it's not feasible for each individual bank to go out and do a partnership with the 10,000 other banks around the world. And the big problems from this is each bank has a copy of their own ledger, there's reconciliation happening at the end of each day, manual entry, it's very common for errors to occur. So it ends up being very costly and very slow. But if all the banks in the world connected to one ledger, one shared ledger, the sending bank can connect directly to the receiving bank. Your money will get there much faster. And if the sending bank requires liquidity to do the foreign exchange, they've got thousands of banks to deal with that they can do a partnership with. That's just one area of banking that the blockchain can really help. Other key areas, syndicated loans, peer-to-peer loans, bond issuance. Currently, there's the Australian Stock Exchange. They're looking at replacing their entire trading platform onto a blockchain. These are all trials happening right now. So blockchain is great for banking. It's great in other areas too, like the shoes you're wearing. How do you know they're real? Or this drug I have in my hand. I take multivitamins every day, and usually I do take these drugs, but I'm probably not going to take this specific one because I bought it from a guy off the street. It's probably counterfeit and probably not safe for me. But this is actually a serious problem. According to Interpol in 2013, 1 million people each year die from counterfeit drugs. And how do I know when I go onto the store shelf that this drug is legitimate, it's safe for me? I don't have transparency into the whole supply chain. If we put the entire supply chain for this drug, the entire life story of this drug, from supplier to manufacturer to distributor, and along the way, each party authenticates the transaction, as a customer, I can have full transparency with authentication and confidence that the life story of this drug is legitimate. That's another area the blockchain can help. Another area right now, distributed asset trading. So if I want to invest in a company, there's a lot of paper involved. I get a copy, that shows how much stock I bought, how much money was paid, they'll photocopy the checks, and that's just one transaction. As a company grows, you're going to have more and more investors coming in, and the paper trail gets longer. And as you do more transactions, you're going to get an auditor to come in and make sure each transaction was legitimate, and then going through the whole story. What NASDAQ is trialing right now is to have a private equities market, a private asset market, where investors will do the transaction on a blockchain, and it's all recorded there. So as the company grows, you don't need an auditor. The audit's already done on the blockchain. And actually, a month ago, First Company actually sold equity in its company on a blockchain. So one thing to caution you all about is decentralization is not consumer friendly. Think of it, the internet. Decentralized information system with a bunch of centralized services on top of it. We have Google, Facebook, Yahoo. You're not going to go and, as a consumer, and spawn up your own email server. No, you're just going to go into Gmail and fill out a form, and you have email. So this is a great opportunity as blockchains grow, and there's more coming out. It's an opportunity to build a centralized service on top of it. The way I see it in the future, blockchain is going to be infrastructure in the background. So, smart contracts. Anybody recognize NSYNC? Justin Timberlake's first boy band? So they actually had an interesting story, which was the first manager they had and the first record label they had, they ended up suing because they didn't get a reasonable amount of money from their revenue that their songs created. If, however, they put their contract, the contract with the record company, if they put it in a smart contract on a blockchain, as a customer buys their music, the share of the revenue automatically gets distributed to each party. So a smart contract is really an enforcement of the contract is executed by the blockchain. So instead of having to trust your manager, you trust the blockchain. So now NSYNC could be saying bye, bye, bye to their manager and hi, hi, hi to the blockchain. Voting. So blockchains are great for governments. If you think about it, especially in corrupt governments, countries with corrupt governments, anytime they run an election, it's mostly a lot of fraud going on. The government itself is a central authority running the election, and they're probably tampering with the election process. If, however, the election process is put onto a blockchain that is managed by multiple parties, the voting process becomes more legitimate. It's very difficult to tamper with. And so a blockchain is a great opportunity for any corrupt government to gain back the trust of their citizens. So we've gone through a bunch of different stories here. I want to hear from the audience. What do you guys think in one word is the common theme between all these stories? One word. What's that? Trust. There you go. The million-dollar answer. Trust. So if you're NSYNC, you don't have to trust your manager. You just trust the blockchain. If you're a customer buying drugs, you don't have to trust the supply chain. You trust the blockchain. If you're a bank, you don't have to trust the other banks or financial institutions you work with. You trust the blockchain. If you're NSYNC, well, okay, we know. So the blockchain is great. It's a great tool that allows multiple parties to collaborate without having to trust each other. Now's the time to get in. Lots of opportunities are opening up. If you're an investor or an entrepreneur, there's lots of money and time that you can invest into this. If you're managing a business, you should be asking yourself the question, what's our blockchain strategy? If you're a developer, a lot of opportunities are going to be opening up for this. So learn how to build blockchains. There's a lot of open source projects, Ethereum, Hyperledger, multi-chain. So trust the blockchain. Trust, it's going to be huge. And now is the time to join the new kids on the blockchain. Thank you.